Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network recap for UFC on ESPN 39, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev, also known as UFC Vegas 58. I'm not your usual host. Your usual host, Keith Shillan, is indisposed, out of town, got some stuff going on, so I am running the show. I am, of course, Ben Duffy, senior editor at Sherdog.com. Joining me this evening is a special guest. This is Adam Duffy, editor-in-chief of The Signal at Georgia State University. Adam, how are you doing today?
I am pretty good, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. This is your third time on the show. I
Yes,
think
it is.
I should send you a bouquet of flowers or a tray of chocolates or something. Definitely. And already the chat is on fire. Technical Wealth I see out there, also known as the Vegas Snoozer. I am comfortable with that as a good tagline for this show. Back in the up to like the early 2010s, when the UFC still gave their cards names, like UFC 74 is stacked,
Yeah.
or there could be only one champion. This one would be UFC on ESPN 39, cut everyone. We'll get to the cut list later. Keith and I, when we're on the show, we'll all often talk about the recency bias, how a great main event can redeem a mediocre fight card, or a lousy main event can just kind of throw a wet blanket over a really memorable night of fights. Did this event, was it saved by the main event? And in your opinion, did it need saving?
That's a tough one. I think that I do think that's true, and I think that this main event did spruce up the whole card as a whole. Honestly, didn't think it was like that bad. Although I should say the ones that I've been on, where I've been on the show, and you've sort of, and I've been sort of forced to really watch through them. I mean, there was Walker versus Hill and Muhammad versus Luke K. And so, in terms of the cards that I've had to do this for, this shines above the rest. So
that is saying a lot.
I mean, it was an all right card. The main event did help it a good bit. I do think the one thing that threw a wet blanket on it was maybe that co-main event, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, we will. As far as the main event goes, who did you pick to win this going into it?
I picked Fiziev going into it. I just thought that combined with his insane Muay Thai skills and that pretty stellar statistic they kept going to in the broadcast of like a 95% takedown defense. I just figured he would outclass RDA, who, while looking good in his past few fights, is on the decline. I just thought he would sort of outclass him over 5 rounds, and that was true going into the fourth.
It is interesting. The fight, for the most part, played out the way I would have thought it would, and then we got the little twist at the end because Fiziev was definitely too much for RDA in the first couple of rounds. Too fast, too accurate. RDA was making no real headway on his takedown game. And late in the third round, Fiziev still seemed fresh as a daisy to me. And then in the fourth round, just all the wheels came off the wagon. RDA got a takedown. He got an emphatic takedown, like slammed him down to the ground, was able to do some damage on top. And at the end of that round, Fiziev looked exhausted. He looked beat up, and I'm not going to say obviously he wasn't broken because he did what we're about to talk about, but he looked like a guy who'd never been in a 5-round fight with a championship level fighter before and was kind of running out of ideas.
Yeah.
If you had asked me at the end of that fourth round, and thankfully I didn't make any stupid ass tweets after that fourth round, I would have been like, I think Dos Anjos might win this. I think he might get a takedown early and just get either just ground and pound Fiziev out or get like a tired man submission. I mean, he loves his arm triangle because he's like an American wrestler in the body of a Brazilian. Just, just get the top position arm triangle on an exhausted guy. But instead, why don't you tell us what happened?
Well, yeah, I agree with you, that sentiment. I was really thinking in my head, just like, all right, Fiziev, you just got to survive this round, because I did have him 3-1 going into the fifth. And I mean, Fiziev showed us all up. I was texting you after that fourth round saying, how excited we were to see if Fiziev could deal with that adversity going into the fifth. And before I could even put my phone down, I was putting my phone down as I heard a loud thud, and I saw, stick-legged RDA hitting the canvas, and I was like, "What just happened?" And I forget the official time, maybe like the first 20 seconds, right?
18 seconds of round 5.
18 seconds. Fiziev puts away RDA with
Now,
a yeah.
This is perfect, and I love something that you mentioned there, because when that round started, I had the exact same thought. Fiziev, you just need to survive. Just survive this round. Like, fight off the takedown as best you can. So if he does take you down, he has 2 minutes to work instead of 4.5. Like, just, he clearly did not come into the round with the thought that he just needed to survive. He didn't fight like a guy who was up 3 rounds to 1. He was still looking for the finish. That's impressive stuff. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that, like, with that, and just of all the boxes that we're looking for in Fiziev in this kind of fight, his biggest fight of his career, all the things we're looking for, he really checked all the boxes. Obviously, the one that you could say he lacked in was just that his cardio going into the main event rounds, which, when you compare, a version of the championship rounds like Fiziev compared to, already freaking A, obviously there was going to be some discrepancy there. But with that, and with his just performance overall, definitely very good.
Okay, 2 points here. I can't believe you just said a version of the championship rounds. I'm definitely stealing that. And yeah, that and you are allowed to cuss on this show, of course. I mean, it is my show.
Okay,
But
cool. Just making sure. Yeah.
okay, so you picked Fiziev to win this. I picked him to win it. He won. He won by a finish, doing something that not a whole lot of people have done to Rafael dos Anjos.
Oh, yeah, putting away RDA. Wow.
But did he do enough that his stock goes up in the win here? Like, obviously he's kind of on the cusp of the top 10. He's either in the top 10, depending on who you're asking, whose poll you're looking at. But he's a guy that they're clearly looking at as a future title contender. Was this enough to move him forward confidently into more main events and title eliminators, or is this just a hold steady moment? And do you guys in the chat, by the way, give us your take on this? I see Boss, our ultimate OG, Bobby Boucher is here, High or Low, who, is always with us these days. Kyle Lawheed. Was this a stock up moment for Fiziev? Are you ready to kind of move him forward in the discussion of future title contention, or is this a holding pattern? And give us your answer, Adam.
Yep. I agree with what a few people are saying already in the chat, but I do think his stock goes up. It's interesting because his last 2 fights against probably against Bobby Green and Brad Riddell were both competitive. Bobby Green, split decision, right? Bobby Green definitely had good moments in that fight. Brad Riddell was doing all right. Oh God, up until the finish.
Yeah, he was behind, but it wasn't a blowout.
But then to beat RDA this way, to beat him pretty solidly over 3 rounds, struggle a little bit going into that 4th round, but obviously I described the discrepancy there. It kind of shows that he's getting better, and that he's improving. And I think he looked pretty stellar in there. And I think I do think his stock goes up, and I think you can seriously start considering him as a real threat in that top 5.
And if you're looking at his performance for any signs of weakness, any negative takeaways, you can say, okay, he looked exhausted in the 4th round.
Yeah.
After fighting off somebody who was a very determined wrestler, trying to bring the fight to the ground for the first 15 minutes, he did get tired. But how many other guys in the lightweight top 10 are going to be able to do that much or worse to him? There are some big wrestly dudes there. I mean, obviously Islam Makhachev is going to be fighting for the vacant title. We've had a couple, Sarukian, Ismagulov, Gamrot, all these fellow up and coming lightweights that are also very good wrestlers. But I didn't see anything tonight that makes me think, okay, he's not ready for those people.
Yeah, that was the thing. I mean, and that's sort of a thing with like that 95% takedown statistic, where at least off the top of my head, he hasn't really been in there with the biggest wrestlers of the division. Obviously RDA was probably the best wrestler he's been with in the UFC, and for like RDA went like 1 for 10 maybe on takedowns, which is impressive on Fiziev's part. But I do see your point that there is a lot of really good wrestlers in this division, and besides maybe a few, I think his performance against RDA shows that he's at least ready to handle most of them. Kyle
Lawheed, throwing daggers in the chat, asks, is Fiziev actually 5'7", or he's listed at 5'9", that or Bisping is now 6'4"? I'm going to put that down to Bisping being in shoes. I think probably, because Bisping he's about 6'2", wearing shoes, but yeah, like Fiziev, they list him at 5'9". I've never been face to face with him. Like a lot of UFC fighters, I can tell you, whether they're built at the correct height. I've never been face to face with Rafael Fiziev, so that one I can't say. But yeah, he's definitely a short, compact guy for the division. But
Yeah.
so is Arman Sarukian. Sarukian's like a little block.
Yeah. So is Chandler. There's a lot of muscly, blocky dudes in the lightweight division.
So who does he fight next, or who should he fight next? One of those muscly, blocky dudes. Everybody in the chat, let us know what you think should be next for Mr. Fiziev. And Adam, give me your take on this.
All right. Yeah. So the biggest takeaway for me is just this sort of this big philosophy on the part of the UFC, but you got this, these new guard of lightweight contenders in the top 15 coming into a top 10 that really has stayed very similar in the past 4 or 5 years. And I think, you're really starting to have that new guard come in, spearheaded by like the Islam Makhachev, but with Fiziev, Gamrot, Saryukin, sort of headed up by Riddell and people like Jalen Turner, and Damir Ismagulov. And saying that's like the pecking order right there. We had that fight last week or a few weeks ago, with Gamrot and Saryukin that sort of established a pecking order in that context. But and I think the UFC is officially ready to has officially sort of ironed out that order and is ready to sort of put these new guys up against their older stars and their veterans, which is why I think the one fight I'd really like to see, both on sort of a competitive standpoint and just from a fan standpoint, is I think I want to see him in there against Michael Chandler. I mean, just on a stylistic level, I think it would be an amazing fight. I want to see that, I want to see that on like a co-main event on a pay-per-view too, because I do think you need a full stadium to appreciate something as good as a fight like that. Besides that, I mean, if we're sticking with that, I wouldn't mind Justin Gaethje too, because that is a very good matchup. Dariush is right there, and then if they are still ironing out who the best new lightweights are, Gamrot is coming off of impressive victory over Saryukin.
Yeah. And it looks like Kyle Lawheed says Gamrot as well. Technical Wealth says Gaethje. Boss likes the Chandler one. I like Boss saying, in my most ideal world where I'm the booker, I'm giving him Dustin Poirier, because of course that is not going to happen. Dustin Poirier he seems to be holding out. He's been very close-mouthed about what's going on between him and the UFC. He's clearly looking for big money fights at this point. So I don't know if that's realistic, but it would be a hell of a fight. As far as I'm concerned, there are a whole bunch of guys on their way up that they're new faces. And in the title picture, I would like to keep those guys from colliding with each other as much as we can. Just, I mean, why knock a new face, out of the order? Much better if you give them someone who's been to the top, had a look at the top of the mountain, and just wasn't quite there. So there you go. Your Chandler, your Gaethje, your Poirier, all three of those guys. All three of those guys have lost to the Bronx. Yes. And I mean, that may not be a problem if Islam Makhachev steamrolls him later this year. Then it's a free for all. But if we can keep him away from like the Gamrots and Saryukins and Ismagulovs, that's great with me. I would much rather have him fight some of the previous title challengers that they have a long way back around, and nothing's happening with them until we see what happens with Oliveira.
This is all caveated by just what's going on at the very top of the division. But I agree. Just like, I mean, even when Gamrot and Saryukin were booked, I was kind of like, okay, well, these are two guys on the way up that I didn't feel it was necessary to put them together, but it's in the past. And but yeah, I would definitely like to see that the current top 5 of just like killers, veterans, fan favorites go up against this new rising guard of exciting fighters.
I gotta call out the chat here. How, when we're talking about the only top 10 fight on the card that actually ended with a sensational finish, how are you filling up my chat with Chase Sherman? It's because they all know that I'm coming to like eat crow over my tweet earlier tonight, and they just can't wait. Are you ready to move on to the co-main?
Yeah, ready to move on. Fiziev, just great job. Can't wait to see what he does next.
co-main event, Caio Borralho versus Armen Petrosyan. I mentioned with Keith on the preview, and we talked about in our last couple of recaps, for the last year or two, the middleweight top 10 has been a void. Just they're all getting older. Tons of them have fought each other already. Just super stagnant. Too many of them have already fought Adesanya. Like if Jared Cannonier hadn't knocked out Derek Brunson in Houston back in February, he would have had 3 rematches in a row for his title defenses. Like there's a reason that they're bringing Alex Pereira in. There's a reason that even last year he was like, I want to move up to light heavyweight and fight for the title. And the UFC was like, fine, because we got nothing for you down here but rematches. But in the last 18 months or so, there's all of a sudden a lot of new faces at 185. They're younger guys. I mean, some of them like, Roman Dolides and Gregory Rodriguez are actually over 30, but a lot of these guys, Borralho, Petrosyan, Nick Maximov, they're younger guys. They're really interesting. They're really talented. And these were 2 of them. Borralho versus Petrosyan. Who'd you pick going into this fight?
I picked Borralho. If I might have said that wrong, but no, I picked him. I just thought that based on his last fight against was it Guram Kutaladze, which I was on the recap show for.
Omar Gadzhiev.
Sorry, Gomar Ajia. Yep, that guy. I was here for his last recap show. Very impressive performance going up to that illegal blow that ended in a win for Borralho, which we talked about a lot. But seeing that performance and going into it, even Borralho said that there was a big gap in Petrosyan's game, and he said he was going to exploit it, which over 3 rounds he very much did. Petrosyan couldn't really get anything off in the stand-up. He would just get taken down over and over. And Borralho just had a solid controlling performance.
He really did. And it's a shame that Petrosyan came along when he did, because before, this whole wave of new 185ers sort of came along in the last year and a half, there weren't a whole lot of guys that would have really, really exploited his wrestling problems. I mean, there's really Gastelum and Brunson, and they're kind of further up the top. All of a sudden, this whole class that he's coming with, those guys can all wrestle. Nick Maximov can wrestle his ass off. Gregory Rodriguez, obviously Borralho can wrestle his ass off. So Petrosyan is a really exciting fighter who might just be the right guy at the wrong time to do well here, because this is a back to the drawing board moment for him. It was a terrible fight. But one guy was doing enough to win easily, and the other just didn't have much of an answer for it.
And I mean, Borralho didn't even seem like he was obviously getting the takedowns, but he was also being a little sloppy about it. And if he can be sloppy and still control you that easily on the ground, it is definitely a drawing board moment. And you're definitely right. I hadn't thought about that the middleweight division is usually one of the least wrestler heavy divisions, but with this new guard is full of them. And so definitely Petrosyan definitely has a lot to work on.
There are a few people in the chat going off about the whole UFC listing Borralho at 5'10". Okay, here's the thing. The UFC's tail of the tape is a complete shit show. One, oftentimes they will just go with whatever, they'll literally go with whatever they find on Sherdog or Tapology. And that is often based on what their regional promotion listed them at. Like if a guy comes to the UFC from like LFA, they're probably just going to take his last tail of the tape from LFA and take their word on the height. And the UFC is also sometimes intentionally a little misleading, but it's always a mess. When Anderson Silva debuted in the UFC, they listed him at 5'11". Like he and Chris Lieben were both supposed to be 5'11", and Silva was like 4 inches taller than he was. Silva grew from like 5'11" to 6'2" over the course of his UFC career, and he was like 30 when he started.
His 30s.
Shane Carwin shrank. They used to list Shane Carwin at 6'5". By the time he fought Brock Lesnar, he was 6'1". Like it's stupid.
Yeah.
I assure you that Caio Borralho is bigger than 6'1", or bigger than 5'11" or 5'10", and I assure you he's a lot more than 185 pounds. Somebody in the chat asked, was his performance where he just kind of did enough and played it safe, was it because he had a bad weight cut and he just didn't trust his own cardio? I don't mind that at all. He's young, man. He's 14 fight veteran, 29 years old. He may just need to get his weight cut dialed in a little better. Do you see like exceptional upside for this guy? Do you see him as a future top 10 guy? Do you see him as a future title contender?
I mean, yeah, it's hard to say whether either those last two things are true based on the two performances I've seen from him. I mean, his first one was very impressive. This one, not as stellar, but I mean, still got the win in a very convincing way. I definitely think that he's among these new middleweights. He's definitely something to look out for. You know, he's great on the ground, and you know that helps him, you know, in the stand up a lot, and so. Yeah, I definitely could see him breaking into the top 15. Hard to say any further until we see any more.
What do you want next for the guy?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about this, how, and really just kind of, yeah, there's a few names floating around in my head. You know, there's a few more middleweights, a little more veteran than him, floating around in the sub top 15 that you could book him with. Just names off the top of my head: Brendan Allen, Phil Haas, you know, all coming off wins. He did, and the other half of this is, you know, if you know, it's the second co-main event, you know, debuted co-main event. This is a co-main event. If he's really getting pushed and to that top 15, closer to that top 15, you know, there's the highest I'd be comfortable putting with is maybe like a high stakes fight with Edmund Shabazian, who just recently changed camps, which is that might be a little bit of a pipe dream and not really what the UFC would look for, but he did.
Do you want Bahalio to just kill all the Armenians? Is that like, do you just hate Armenians?
I promise, don't read too far into it.
Yeah.
But then again, he did call out Dricus du Plessis, which is interesting. I mean, he's ranked number 14 now after a very impressive win over Brad Tavares. Well, it was Brad Tavares, right? Yeah, it was Brad Tavares. And I mean, that could work. That could work, but I don't know. Just du Plessis does seem to be just a little higher up than him. And definitely kind of aspiring for better.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Lougheed mentions Chris Curtis, who is now stepping in on short notice. You know, 2 weeks from now. But for me, Curtis has already beaten 3 people that are like higher ranked and at least comparable to Bahalio. He shouldn't need to take a step back. I mean, do you really want a story as fun as Chris Curtis just to face this grappler twice his size? Come on, don't do that to the man.
Yeah,
I mean, his call out of du Plessis was great with me. I like your mention of people like Brendan Allen, because same as at lightweight, I just don't want him to go against the same crop of guys that are coming up with him. Like, why not keep them separate for the time being?
Yeah.
Give him a guy that's ranked, you know, on the borders of the top 15, or, you know, even in kind of the 11 through 15 spots, but has already lost a couple, like isn't just rocketing up. And those are guys like Brendan Allen, or Phil Haas, I think you mentioned as well. I like either. Fluffy Hernandez says Tom Cleary. Tom, I don't know if you've been on our chat before, but thanks for joining us. Fluffy Hernandez, that works for me as well.
Yeah.
And you know what? If you're a good grappler, but you're not sure of your gas tank, Fluffy Hernandez is going to make you pay. Like, that was our biggest upset of 2020, probably, was him choking out Rodolfo Vieira after Vieira like just gassed terribly.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the co-main, or should we give the people what they want?
Nope, nothing more.
Or no, wait a minute. We got a whole other fight before this. We got to talk about Said Nurmagomedov versus Douglas Silva de Andrade first.
I mean, it's what I want. Maybe not what the chat wants, but it is what I want to talk about.
You know, we're going to do these fights in order. Like, everyone, you're going to eat your vegetables before you get your dessert. The dessert is me, like, eating shit on a public stream on YouTube. So, like, stick around. But let's talk about Said Nurmagomedov versus Douglas Silva de Andrade for a minute. Nurmagomedov is the other kind of Dagestani. The guy that I know how to wrestle, but I would rather use that to keep things on the feet and karatecize your ass. Taking on a guy in Douglas Silva de Andrade that at age 37, in a weight class that typically is not kind to the elderly, he came into this fighting as well as he has in his entire career. Injury woes seem to be a thing of the past. Weight cut on point. He looks like a stack of bricks.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Nurmagomedov was a pretty big favorite coming into this, but did his performance live up to your expectations?
Did this De Andrade's performance, or
no, Nurmagomedov was like a minus 280 favorite coming. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It pared down a little bit during fight week, but
for sure
he was like a 3-1 favorite.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like just 3-1 favorite. You know, it definitely could have been close to that, maybe a 2-1 favorite or something like that, based on the performance. I mean, Nurmagomedov just put on a pretty good performance. I definitely had all the same things to say about Andrade. 37 years old at 135 pounds. Couldn't look any better on him. And but Nurmagomedov still showed that he was just a step ahead for pretty much the entire fight. Just slightly.
Dev Goes Fishing messaged me during the fights, and I'm glad you brought this out because I was going to steal your line otherwise.
Yeah.
That fight is what Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier should have looked like.
Yeah. No, totally.
My issue with Nurmagomedov's performance, and this is nitpicking because he beat a very good fighter, and he, depending on how you scored it, he might have won all 3 rounds. He was trying too hard to finish this with something spectacular. In the first round, he was throwing spinning back elbows and spinning back fists that I tweeted this. It wasn't that they were telegraphed. Like, he sent a save the date card in advance. There was one where he literally looked over his shoulder before he even started to spin. The move probably took 5 whole seconds to do. And I was impressed that he didn't pay for it with like getting slammed on his head earlier than he did. And then in the second round, he started throwing flying knees. And my thought was, you're the bigger fighter, you're the younger fighter, and you're arguably the more skilled fighter everywhere. Just win your fight.
Yeah.
Like, don't make this the one where, you get caught doing something stupid and you either get lamped because Douglas Silva hits like a truck, or he takes you down, slams you, and you lose a whole round with this dude sitting on you. I did have him losing 1 round. I gave Silva the second round, but Nurmagomedov, impressive performance, but he's quickly going to run into people that he cannot play that against. If he tried that against Merab Dvalishvili, that round is over.
Yeah, he gets picked up, dropped, and he does not get back up for the rest of the round.
135 has got good wrestlers at the top.
Yeah.
Like, we'll talk about what's next for him, but the top 7 or 8 guys in that division, you're talking about Aljamain Sterling, Petr Yan, Merab Dvalishvili.
Monsters.
If he ever comes back, Henry Cejudo.
Yeah, just
like,
even
TJ Dillashaw,
even Dominic Cruz, just all of them. Like that performance from Nurmagomedov would get him eaten up by most of the top 10.
Kyle Lawheed in the chat asks, what would Douglas Andrade weigh if he was 6'4"? If he was 6'4", he would be like a neutron star. Like,
it'd be so
time
dense.
and space would start to warp around him. Yeah. Like, we could slingshot around him and go back in time. Like, he would weigh so much.
Oh my God. Yeah, dude, that'd be terrifying.
Dev says Saeed looked fearful anytime they were in the pocket. I completely agree, because anytime he's in the pocket, that's, he's in Douglas Silva's range. Silva throws a mean right overhand. That's always been kind of a money punch in MMA for putting down a taller fighter. Like, it seems non-intuitive that the taller guy's gonna get hit with an overhand by the short guy, but it happens a lot. I can understand. Charlie asks the question I'm about to ask you: do we fade Saeed in his next fight, or did he show enough that this is going to be at least a lateral move or a move forward for his next?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. And to your point of like being a little flashy, I do think he was kind of riding that high of his 2 first-minute finishes over some pretty decent competition, especially that Cody Stamann fight, which is interesting because at the time I think Cody Stamann was like ranked number 15, or he had just left the top 15, and so to choke him out in less than a minute was definitely made him at least right there at the bottom. And I mean, with a performance like this, while I do think he was trying, he had those flaws in his performance. I think it was like I thought it was a fun enough fight, and it definitely showed off his very fan friendly style enough to where I think he's deserving and ready for an upper level competition, for a higher level competition, I should say.
Dev says, even guys like Adrian Yanez that have good vision and pocket combos would give Saeed a lot of trouble. I agree. An accurate puncher.
Yeah.
Adrian Yanez, Sean O'Malley, like even some guys that aren't on the up and comer, but just, like a Rob Font. Rob Font just would have been glued, like his jab and his right cross would have just been glued to Umar's face all day.
Yeah.
Any specific guys that you'd like to see Umar fight next, or is he more of just any borderline 10 through 20 guy coming off a win, or like if he's closer to the 10 coming off a loss? Like, at specific names?
Yeah, well, for Saeed, I think, there's a few fun names floating around in that sub 15 that sort of a lateral jump for him that I think he could fight. I think the one that stuck out to me and just would be maybe a fun fight would be Kyler Phillips. I uh, I remember enjoying that, enjoying his fights with Kenny and with Song Yudong, and so I that's the one that like pops in my head as being fun, being good competition. I think if depending on what you're thinking, if you're ready to launch him towards the top 15, people like Yanez and O'Malley are kind of maybe not the best fit. But
Don't crash don't crash the shiny new cars together before you
yeah,
have to.
but then you run into this weird thing where the next like sort of vet on the way down that he could sort of leapfrog off of. I'm just looking at the list right now. Would be Frankie Edgar, which maybe that's something they could put together. But it's just sort of a weird one in my head. But besides that, the next part would be pretty high up.
Kyle says Saeed versus Randy Costa. I assume he means Randy Costa. If he means Paulo Costa, what the hell is wrong with you?
He's not that like Izzy, okay? He's still like 40 pounds lighter.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Casey Kenny. I like
he was on the list too.
Casey Kenny. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one before we head on to the people's main event?
You know what? I won't stall any longer. Let's go on.
Okay. I'm not Dick Vitale. I don't have catchphrases. Like, I'm not so self-important as to think I have catchphrases. But there are terms that I come back to over and over again that some of our listeners are probably familiar with. And almost every UFC card has what I call the obligatory unranked heavyweight slobber knocker. just a fight that between two unranked heavyweights that are like oftentimes neither of them is really UFC material, and the UFC will push it up onto the main card because they hope they'll get a spectacular finish, and just because they still have. I swear it's a Dana White thing. I think it's a Dana White thing from being with the UFC since 2000, where he's like, "Oh, the casuals, they love the big guys. Like, they just want to see two big guys throwing down." Back when the UFC's like lightest weight class was 170.
Yeah.
The one on this card was Chase Sherman versus Jared Vanderaa. First things about this fight, even by the standards of the obligatory heavyweight slobber knocker in the UFC, this one was low level. Vanderaa 1-4 in the UFC coming in. Sherman 3-9 in the UFC coming in. He's getting to the point where it's mathematically one of the worst records any UFC fighters ever had, with like more than 3 fights where they didn't just go 0-3. Mm-hmm. He was cut, did some BKFC, came back. He's 1-4 in this stint, and his only win since he's been back was over Ike Villanueva. I like the guy, consider him a friend, but a marginal UFC light heavyweight. Mm-hmm. And that's Sherman's only win since he's been back. This is about as bad a fight as you could make in the UFC's heavyweight division. I mocked it endlessly on the preview, and in the middle of the fight, I mocked it endlessly, starting by saying that considering that one guy is from California and one's from Mississippi, why did the Mississippi guy have the California tan and the California guy have the Mississippi tan? Because Jared Vanderaa had the hardest like tan line on his neck that I've seen in a UFC fighter, I think, ever. And then Sherman just like looks like a surfer. Anyway, I pointed out that, okay, Chase Sherman doesn't really do anything at a UFC level, but specifically for a guy that looks like he does, because he looks like you would expect a good heavyweight in the UFC to look if you were a non-fan or a casual fan. A 6'4" guy that's 250 pounds, not fat. I mean, he's got like a 6-pack. Mm-hmm. He has no power. Like, he has no punching power. And I said there's a moment in every one of his fights where his opponent realizes that for a heavyweight he has no power, and it's like just a light comes on in their eyes. And that's why he's 3-9 in the UFC, because once dudes realize that, they either ragdoll him or they just punch him out. And you could see it happen for Vanderaa, because in the second round of that fight, Sherman punched Vanderaa as hard as he could in the face like 8 times, and all it did was knock sweat off. So I felt comfortable. I was styling. You're probably too young to get this reference, but for those of you who are old enough that you played GoldenEye, I called Chase Sherman 2 Clobs, because he was like that one level where you could wield 2 Clobs at the same time, and it looked cool, but did no damage. Yeah. So dueling Clobs, Chase Sherman made me look like a dumbass, because in the third round, well, 8 punches wasn't enough. He landed like 30 haymakers to Jared Vanderaa, and Vanderaa just finally melted against the fence. And people came after me for my tweets. They're like, "Well, this didn't age well." I'm like, "Dude, what heavyweight takes 40 punches to finish somebody?" This proved my tweet.
Like, heavyweight shouldn't have a finishing sequence that's like a 30-punch combo.
Yeah. James Scott says DK mode. Hey, you don't say those things about Bigfoot Silva. He's over in boxing now. You playing slappers only. Boss. Oh, Chase slappers only Sherman. I would accept that as well as 2 clubs. So I apologize. Chase Sherman has a TKO in the UFC, and I swear, at no points in that thing was Jared Vanderaa out. He just sort of slumped against the fence. He was like, "Why is this happening to me?" I think he realized, "Oh shit, there's 3 more fights on this card. If I just sit down, can we all go home sooner?"
Yeah, you know, I think they opened this fight both with an urgency, a little bit of an urgency to perform based on their records, but towards the end there may be an urgency just to go home. But yeah, that was a good little rant. I did write down, like, my first little note was token heavyweight fight, because, you know, ever since you told me every, you know, main card has to have one fight, I was like, is that true? And everyone since, I was like, oh wow, yeah, it's true.
It's why you can tell the great UFC cards on paper, if they really care about it, if it's one of their 4 or 5 big like tentpole pay-per-views of the year, there won't be an unranked heavyweight fight on the main card. They'll either, like, if the headliner is a heavyweight fight, great, you got a title fight. Otherwise, they'll put like a light heavyweight fight up there that they still think might end in a finish, and they'll like bury the heavyweight garbage on the undercard.
Yeah, it is a little bit of that heavyweight brain rot. Just
how do we
just like
put together an Orlovsky-esque win streak for Sherman? I don't know, but we're going to have time to because I'm waiting for the announcement that because of this win, they signed him to another 8-fight deal, because the guy clearly knows where some bodies are hid, or has nudes of Dana or something, or he's a hypnotist, because I don't get it.
I was looking at, before his fight started, I was looking over his record. I was like, how's this guy fourth, like from the night of the last night, and still in the UFC?
Yeah. I've got nothing else to say about this one. Like, can we move on?
If the chat's all right with that.
Sherman versus Alan Baudot in Paris. I think they already matched Alan Baudot with somebody that's going to whoop his ass. I'll need to. I don't. Here, let me remind myself who it is. But
he just got his ass whooped, didn't he, Alan Baudot?
Yeah, he just got his ass whooped in the obligatory heavyweight slobber knocker of a couple weeks ago.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, let's go to something else here. The main card opener. I don't see what's the real difference when you don't even change channels anymore for these ESPN cards. I just stayed on ESPN Plus the whole time. But
yeah,
you know, one of their stupid 20-minute commercial breaks was right before the Michael Johnson versus Jamie Mullarkey fight. What were your takeaways from this one? What did you think of the fight? How'd you score it, by the way? Like, give me that if you like.
Mullarkey versus Johnson.
Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. I was. Do we talk about Sahabi and Tercios, or did you want to?
Oh, that's right. What? Oh, it's because I'm going off the fight order in my preview notes, which is why I keep missing these.
Okay. Well, I could talk about either.
No, let's talk about Tercios versus Zahabi.
Okay.
This is gonna hurt me. So give me your impressions first before I get personal.
Well, you know what? Yeah. Interesting fight. I mean,
no, I was.
So yeah, you were. I was sort of getting up and doing stuff, like during the first round, and so no, I'm coming back to my desk after I got some snacks downstairs, and I'm like, before I put my headphones on, I see how they're moving. I'm like, oh, this looks pretty interesting, and then I put on my headphones and start actually paying attention to the fight. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? I like, my first thought going into like after a round of that was like, Tercios is fighting like he's like a stunt man, like he's throwing like a.
I'm dead.
He's throwing 1,000 punches, and he's like whiffing each, like he's what's the word? Pulling all of his punches. He's fighting like he's in some sort of James Bourne action movie.
Oh my goodness. Because I know exactly what you're talking about, because I kept on saying, what is this? It looks like sparring. It almost looks like not even sparring, but like just the shadow boxing that they used to have the fighters do for that little gif that they'd loop during the tail of the tape. I'm like, what is this? It looks like a stunt man fighting. Yeah, it was so weird. And the thing is, okay, Ricky Tercios, even at his best, he is a high volume, low power guy on the feet. That's his style. Like he's a karate type guy, like to bounce on his feet, switch stances, throw out a lot of kind of half speed, half power things. Just that's his style. But here, he would throw like 3 punch combos that just all kind of tapped off of Zahabi's guard. It was so strange. And considering that his coach is kind of a pathologically aggressive guy in Alex Morono, I was like, this will make an interesting ride home to Houston or flight home to Houston. But I don't even know how to score this. I mean, it's either 30-27 Zahabi, or I gave it 29-28 Zahabi, just because they both did nothing in the first round and just Tercios did more of nothing. Like 50 times 0 is greater than 17 times 0. That's not good math, but it's how I scored the round.
Right.
Just bury this fight, or as Jay Petrie, Sherdog Associate Editor, would put it, put this fight in the outside garbage. Like when you can't just put it in the kitchen trash because it's going to smell, like put that take it straight to the outside garbage. Abaz asking about the clap feint technique. Yeah. It's weird, dude. Like I was
confused. I didn't know what was going on.
I love Ricky Tercios. He's a local guy to me here. I've interviewed him, several times, just like literally like just filmed him with my phone backstage at Fury things. Like I know the guy, and stardom is there if he keeps winning, because he's just a charming oddball of a guy. He reminds me of like Diego Sanchez without the meanness, because Diego Sanchez during his prime he was an odd dude that like meditated and had like no TVs or furniture in his house, and like said kind of weird hippie shit, but at the same time he called himself the Nightmare, and he like would say mean stuff about what he was going to do to his opponents. Like Tercios is just like the happy-go-lucky version of that. But this fight hurts.
Yeah.
The only thing that got hurt in this fight was kind of his stock going forward, because on top of all this, Aiemann Zahabi is really not a UFC level guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was kind of surprised to see he came back at all. I figured he either had quietly retired or been cut. He's probably getting a little bit of extra squeeze just from being Firas Zahabi's brother, but
yeah,
this was a bad fight. Like this is one of the worst fights of the year. Yeah. This fight is chilling with Rose Esparza 2 down in Hell's Basement. Yes. This is Rose Esparza 2 without the high stakes, where I thought this was going to be good.
Yeah.
But also without the 2 extra rounds. So yeah.
Yeah. Ups and downs. It reminds me, of any, God, what's her name? The future, 125 pounds. Just fought Macy Barber. It reminds me of a lot of Macy Barber performances, because Macy Barber also likes to throw combos to the wind in front of her opponents.
Well, yeah. Well, I was asking, has anybody ever seen Tercios and Caitlin Chikagian in the same place? Because like once he started making the key eyes and like punching combos in air, I was like,
right. He just rips off, and it's Caitlin Chikagian.
It would have worked too if not for you meddling kids. Can we not talk about this fight ever again?
Yes. Let's go on to a good fight of the night. A really good fight, actually.
Really good fight. Yes, lightweight action. Michael Johnson versus Jamie Mullarkey. If you're watching this right now, you've heard my rant about Michael Johnson probably multiple times. The rant never changes because Michael Johnson never changes. Having said that, this was a pretty good version of Michael Johnson. I mean, my official prediction was Johnson by first round KO. And if you'd ask me what my second most likely outcome would be, it would be Michael Johnson gets jobbed by a kind of an iffy split decision in a really good fight. So,
wow,
he almost knocked him out in the first round.
Yeah, almost
turned into a good
round. First round.
I mean, who'd you score it for? Because this one was a splitter, and
yeah, I picked Mullarkey going in. Obviously, any day of the week you flip a coin. Michael Johnson loses to anybody, beats anybody, but I did think Mullarkey would win either by a knockout or by a decision. But Michael Johnson looked really good. I actually, although I picked Mullarkey, I thought going into it that Johnson was going to eke out the decision, and obviously at least one judge thought that as well. But just in general, Johnson looked really just, I mean, solid for, I mean, this is the most, these two fights he's had in just 2 months has been some of the most active he's been in years. And no, he looked really good tonight.
He did. I guess the swing round comes down to how you scored the first round, because
Yeah.
Johnson got a clean knockdown in the middle of the round. Then at the end of the round, Malarkey got what, I mean, certainly could have been scored a knockdown, and then time ran out. But I gave that round to Johnson. And then after that, I thought the second round was pretty clear for Malarkey. Third round was pretty clear for Johnson. I'm looking at the official media scores on MMAdecisions.com, and it's like about 15-4 for Johnson.
Word.
And one of the ones who scored it for Malarkey is Sean Sheehan, who is part of the Sherdog Radio Network. So I will be sure to let him have it, because I don't know what the hell is wrong with him.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I should clarify that. Yeah, the first round, I do think I scored for Johnson, as well as the third round. I do think that Johnson's knockdown, if we are saying it's 1-1 for knockdowns, was more impactful. I think and I think aside from that, he just had more activity.
And even if the two knockdowns just completely say they cancel each other out like they would in a boxing match, I thought Johnson won the rest of the round. Like I thought it was 29-28 Johnson. I don't say robbery very easily, so I'm not saying it's a robbery. It's just another splitter where I didn't love the way it went.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because Michael Johnson going into this, I mean, he's fighting for his job every time out. He is the best below 500 in the UFC fighter ever.
Yeah.
Like, he was 12-13 in the UFC coming into this. He's now 12-14. I hope they don't cut him off of this, because it would be a shame. Yeah. And the thing is, he's still not a bad fighter. Like, he's just not an easy out for most people, unless they're Khabib Nurmagomedov. I don't think they will. We'll get to our own cut list, who we think should be cut in a little bit, but I don't think the UFC will. He's not very expensive for how recognizable he is to hardcores, and for just how good he is. I don't think he's that expensive, and he is the kind of fighter that Bellator or PFL would snatch up in a heartbeat, and that always informs the UFC's hiring and firing choices on these.
Yeah,
they keep people on roster that they don't think will be of much value to their competitors, or if they do, they try to ruin their value as much on the way out the door. Like,
yeah, right. Just
if the UFC knows you're going to fight out the last fight on your contract, that's when they give you, like, oh, you're Tito Ortiz and you're leaving us, you're going to fight Lyoto Machida on your way out, the guy that's impossible to look good against.
Yeah.
Cajun Johnson, that, not only are you going to leave, but you've been talking about unionizing, you're getting Rustam Habibov on your way out. Like, so I think Michael Johnson sticks around and just remains the most infuriating fighter in the game for a couple more years.
Yeah. Michael Johnson is just such an enigma in the world of MMA, but
yes,
always fun to see. Always good to see him fight.
That kind of brings us to the split between the main and undercards. If we want to stop for a minute and talk about bonuses, I know what the bonuses are.
Oh, okay.
So do you know what they are?
I do not know.
Okay, so in the chat, don't say what they are. Don't guess what they are. Say what you think they would be. They should be. There is a fight of the night and 2 performances of the night. So give us what you would give those to. And Adam, you can either guess what you think they actually are, or tell me what you think they should be.
Okay, so you said 1 performance of the night and 2 fight of the nights.
No, it's 1 fight of the night for the 2 people, and then 2 individual performances of the night.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna throw out a wad. Actually, no. Okay, yeah, I think I know who got the awards.
Okay, give me your guesses.
So for fight of the night, I'm gonna say Johnson Malarkey. It's actually not. I'll say Johnson Malarkey was fight of the night. I would also have. Wouldn't mind if that was also given to Nurmagomedov versus Dan Andrade. Performances of the night, I think, went to Fiziev, and I think went to first fight of the night, Kakhramonov. That's kind of a out there one, but
all right,
that's my guess.
Your actual fight of the night was Malarkey versus Johnson. Your performances of the night, Rafael Fiziev and Chase 2 Clubs Sherman.
Okay.
His dueling water pistols bought him $50,000 bonus. Like,
$50K
congratulations
for
$50K
that. Wow.
for Chase Sherman. Congratulations. Looking at the chat here, Johnson and Malarkey, Sherman and Fiziev. That I don't know if that was Boss's guess and he guessed correctly, or he's just agreeing with what actually happened. Bobby Boucher, Sherman and Brundage for performances of the night. I like both of those, but I mean, if somebody gets a nasty knockout in the main event, it's not going that way. Johnson versus Malarkey. Does anybody in the chat not think Malarkey versus Johnson was fight of the night? Because it was kind of a 3-horse race. Like, the main event was okay. Silva de Andrade versus Nurmagomedov was good, and then obviously Johnson versus Malarkey. Dev Goes Fishing says Saeed Yakub had the most impressive performance. I agree, but it's hard to make like a snappy highlight gif of somebody just wrestle fucking another dude for 15 minutes. So,
that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Rosie Sellers says if me means that you are raising your hand to someone who would have given fight of the night to a different fight than Johnson versus Malarkey, then say what you got. With the bonus, Chase gets 10 times his show money. Oh, man.
I was going to say.
Dude, he has 12 fights in the UFC. I bet he makes surprisingly good. I bet he makes surprisingly good money.
Sherman's an interesting one. And I should caveat that. Actually, never mind. But I in my opinion, I would give the fight of the night to Nurmagomedov versus Andrade, just because I think it was very competitive. It was very exciting. Not as much of like a really gritty slugfest as Johnson Malarkey, but I just love watching fighters like Nurmagomedov. So that's why I would give it the nod. All
right. Our top prelim of the night was Cody Brundage versus Tresean Gore. So we had a bit of Tough 29 versus Dana White's Contender Series. This fight, I believe Gore was the slight favorite. Yeah, Gore was the slightest of favorites coming into it. Obviously, he has a ton of upside athletically. Super quick, hits really hard. Brundage, a very grindy guy. Like, he was very upset by the characterization that he's a grindy wrestler. Like, obviously he got all like fired up about it.
Jerry chip on the shoulder.
But I picked Brundage to win this one. And you know what? Of the 11 fights that actually made it through the door, I went 5-6. So I'm definitely going to take my moments to brag when I get them. I thought Brundage would be able to wrestle Gore. I also thought I had the sneaking suspicion that Gore is porous enough on the feet that even Brundage, like not having nearly as good hand speed, might be able to take advantage of him. And sure enough, that end, and much as I enjoy having you on here, I wish Keith were here to pick up his roses for saying that Gore throws a lot of naked leg kicks, because that's what set it off. Threw a leg kick.
Yeah.
Nothing before it, nothing after it. And he threw it so hard that he was kind of going off balance. Brundage just caught him with a short hook and put him down.
Yeah.
And Gore has time to fix this, but he looked super wild and sloppy on the feet. Any decent 185er in the UFC is going to take advantage of that. Like,
and I mean, he was probably the most inexperienced fighter on the card, right? This was his 5th professional MMA fight. But definitely things he needs to work on. But he's got time, and hopefully, as long as he doesn't string too many bad performances together. But I agree with all that sentiment.
Yeah, Gore's going to get every possible chance, because when he's on, he provides highlight reel moments. That's going to buy you a lot of time with the UFC, but he's got to take a step back. Like that was not the performance of a UFC level heavyweight. That's the kind of thing you see out of a promising prospect, like in LFA or like a feeder promotion. So bad moment for not your winner, but your finalist, and the guy generally seen as having the greatest upside from Tough 29. I can only imagine what a shit show Tough 30 must be. I've made it a point not to watch any of it, so it'll just be like Christmas morning.
I'm sure we'll be talking about the Tresean Gores of this season 30 in a few months, I'm sure.
Women's flyweight. Antonina Shevchenko and Courtney Casey take each like on the preview, Keith joked because I started to realize something and Keith jumped out on top of it. Like, okay, this card has like Faraz Sahabi's brother with less fight IQ. It's got the worst Shevchenko. It's got Amanda Nunes's worst wife. It's got Drakkar Klose's like not as good girlfriend in Courtney Casey. Like this
Just
was
fight,
like the
fight of the sidekicks, or like the discount versions,
or
the
like
Walmart.
leftovers night.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Just like the great value versions of good fighters,
Antonina Shevchenko versus Courtney Casey. This,
dude.
God, I mean, how did you score the fight? Like, who did you think the right person won it?
I did. That first round was kept very rangy. Playing Shevchenko's game for the most part, where she was finding success. Thought she won the first round. Round two, she won most of it. Definitely had some adversity towards the end there, but not enough to give the round to Casey. I did think the third round went to Casey, pretty convincingly, and which gave Shevchenko the win in my book. Casey towards the end there when she started really laying on the pressure and not fighting at the range that Shevchenko wanted, was finding some success. And in hindsight, it's probably something she should have done from the beginning. But yeah, I don't know. I will admit I did take the Shevchenko Casey fight as a opportunity to go eat a sandwich. So I didn't maybe analyze the fight as closely as I should have.
It was a terrible fight. Like it was lousy. And I kind of expected it to be. I had a little bit of hope because I thought Antonina Shevchenko, I mean, she's never going to shoot a takedown, but if she did, I bet she could take Casey down. Casey like probably has the worst takedown defense in that division. I anytime I talk about her, I just have to talk about her getting ragdolled by Michelle Watterson, who looked 2 weight classes smaller than her. So, I mean, against Shevchenko, a big 125er against Casey, a former 115. And she did take her down in the first round, but then she didn't anymore. And it just turned into the kind of lukewarm kickboxing match that I was afraid it would be. Yeah. It was terrible. That fight, again, can go in the outside garbage. If this is your first time watching the show, we aren't normally this hard on things. Like, we're not here to bash anything, but when you're previewing and recapping every single UFC card, 45 weekends a year, there's no reason to say every one of them is the best thing ever. Because when something is the best thing ever, then it loses any impact when we blow it up. Like, next week's Fight Night card is dope.
Oh yeah, dude.
Anyway,
like I mentioned, I'm so far my third appearance here on the recap show. Not been for the greatest cards. Hoping one day
Adam
I'll get
curse. It's the Adam curse.
Or maybe Keith just doesn't want to show when it's not a great card.
Well, but I'm missing 2 cards this month where Keith is having to do the recap with someone else, and they're the 2 numbered pay-per-views. It's 276, the last week, and 277 at the end of the month. Brutal. Yeah.
But maybe one of these days I'll get on for like a fight night like Rodriguez versus Ortega coming up, because that is going to be a card. That's
an early card, and because of that, I don't think Keith is going to be able to do it. So I think I am going to bring in a sub. Anyway, next fight, David Onama versus Garrett Armfield. So Onama had been scheduled to face. Let me scroll to my. Had been scheduled to face Austin Lingo. He was like a minus 280 favorite over Lingo, but I thought it was going to be an appropriate next test for a guy in Onama that seems to have enormous upside and is super exciting to watch fight as well. Once Lingo was out and they brought in Armfield, okay, one, it's a guy stepping in on day's notice. It's a guy that Onama had already beaten when they were both amateurs. Onama was something like a minus 800 favorite going into this. The kind of thing that you just don't see in the UFC very often. I thought he looked fantastic. You have to be a little worried about his takedown defense. I thought Armfield got in on his hips pretty easily. And I mean, really just kind of slammed him around for a few seconds there. Onama I mean, being as tall and skinny and like legs as long as his, he's probably never going to have stellar takedown defense.
Mhm.
So I like at least what he did there. Like he didn't really just concede the takedown and sit on his butt. He grabbed a whizzer or grabbed a single of his own, kept his butt moving, and created scrambles rather than takedowns. Like he
Yeah.
never really let Armfield just kind of set up camp and go to work from top position, which is what he's going to have to do if he's going to work his way up 145, which the top 10 of 145 doesn't really have much in the way of wrestlers right now,
Mhm.
but they stand at the gate with an axe, like waiting for you to enter.
Yeah.
Then the submission. I tell you what, man. I was talking about this in the Sherdog like editorial Slack as the card went on. More people go all the way out. We get more technical submissions from arm triangle chokes than just about any other technique because it's basically all blood. Like you can be in an arm triangle choke and be like, I'm fine, I can breathe.
Yeah, right.
And then the next thing you know, you're asleep.
You're getting woken up.
You're getting smelling salt, or they're doing the knuckles in the sternum thing. You might have sharded your fight kit a little bit. Like sure. Arm triangle chokes are scary that way. Like, Mike Sloan, he's definitely the most credentialed grappler on the Sherdog staff. There's a difference in like the kind of fear, like how quick somebody is to tap for something. Like he's like, if you walk into the room and just yell heel hook, he'll start tapping. Like, like just wearing business clothes, or you're just like sitting around, somebody else heel hooking. And even when there's like an arm bar, you can see the fighter that's in the hold going, okay, can I gut it out for another 10 seconds? So often fighters are taken by surprise by the arm triangle.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Smith was like, show me you're good, and Armfield put a thumbs up and then put a thumbs down.
Sure and went out. All of his lips went down.
Yeah, and
Armfield looked teeny tiny. It says boss. Yeah. A lot of featherweights are going to look kind of tiny in front of Onama, especially ones who are former bantamweights like Armfield. So as Dev points out, yeah, boss. Rolling back to the last fight for 1 second, having to hear Valentina shriek whenever Antonina threw a kick sucked. Yeah, that's rough. But at least I don't think we saw like the little Kyrgyzstani like fighting jig afterwards, which for at least one of whom is like literally a world-class athlete. It's the most awkward looking dance of all time. It's awful.
Like when Shevchenko, the champion Shevchenko, defends her belt and does it. It's passable, but it's a little worse when Antonia does it. And that's funny too. Antonia just having in her corner her husband and her husband's girlfriend, who also is her brother, her sister. But that's a whole other thing.
And yeah, the weirdness. It's a topic for another show.
Yep.
Because like there's stuff going on there that like makes Pat Barry go, dude, not cool.
Oh man. Yep.
Second from the bottom at UFC Vegas 58 was a light heavyweight matchup between Kennedy Nzechukwu and Carl Roberson. I called this fight dead wrong. I'm always here ready to take accountability, take my lumps when I got a fight wrong. But here, not only did I get the result wrong, I got the entire complexion of the fight wrong. Like, when did we get D1 Nzechukwu shooting double legs? Like, he just completely wrestled the crap out of Carl Roberson.
Yeah.
For most of 3 rounds. It's one of the more surprising fights I've seen in like certainly this year in the UFC, just not in terms just of the results, but of what actually happened in the cage. Because I figured Kennedy Nzechukwu he's a known product. He is what he is. He's been at Fortis MMA for essentially his entire career. He's a guy with enormous physical gifts that is a matchup problem for anybody just from being as big as he is.
Huge guy.
But we're not going to see any new wrinkles. And then all of a sudden we're seeing new wrinkles.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, any takeaways on this one?
No, besides my difficulty in trying to combine his last name of Nzechukwu with like Nurmagomedov, trying to make that little joke, with when he busts out that wrestling. But no, besides that, impressive performance. Definitely did not expect the wrestling out of him. But I mean, if he continues like that, I mean, man, he's definitely kind of a problem.
So Magomed Kennedy Nzechukwu gets it done.
Wow, impressive.
Possibly preserves his job. I mean, he was only 3-3 in the UFC, but
Uh-huh.
either way, a dominant win looks good going forward and gives the rest of the light heavyweight division something to think about anyway. That brings us to the opener. Ronnie Lawrence versus Saidukub Kakramanov in a fight between two guys that looked really, really similar. Like almost like the double Spider-Man pointing meme. They looked more like brothers than some actual brothers that have fought. Like they look close. They look more closely related than like Jim and Dan Miller or Nick and Nate Diaz. Like
Yeah,
what the hell was up with that?
and they had similar hairstyles going on. It was confusing at some points. Yeah.
If they were brothers, we figured out which one was the big brother.
Yeah, tough.
You were impressed by this performance. Like, tell me what you saw.
I was. I mean, I picked Ronnie Lawrence to win, sort of off of name value, but then also of what little that goes for, but also that his last couple of performances have been pretty impressive. But no, Kakramanov, I mean, didn't just win, man. I mean, one of the judges gave it a 30-26, and while I might not have been that brutal about it, I don't mind it either because he had a really dominant performance over a guy who was also fairly good. And and I did write down in my first notes, could have been performance of the night. Usually not given to somebody this far down the card, but I think it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Dev mentioned, because I did say on the preview, Kennedy Nzechukwu, nickname is the African Savage. We will file that under nicknames that you can give yourself, but nobody else had better try to give you. As far as Lawrence versus Kakramanov, incredibly impressive performance by Kakramanov. I mean, I picked Lawrence. I knew that was a bit of a flyer. I thought the wrestling might be too much. I just didn't realize how badly it would be too much. And I was impressed by Kakramanov's gas tank because it's not like Lawrence wasn't trying to resist these takedowns. Kakramanov, he wasn't just like, putting out his like little umbrella and like getting a drink while he was in top position. He was having to work, and his cardio was on point.
Yeah.
I know I saw some people gave a 10-8 round in round 2, like some of the media, as well as, fans on Twitter, obviously at least one of the judges. To me, the thing is, Kakramanov thoroughly out-wrestled Lawrence, like took him down with ease, got easy mat returns when Lawrence was able to stand up, but there wasn't much in the way of realistic threatening submission attempts. There wasn't a whole lot of ground and pound.
Yeah.
A dominant performance, a dominant takedown performance without submissions or strikes, that's not a 10-8 round. That's a citizen's arrest.
That's a good line. I like that.
It's a judo clinic,
No, you're right. And in that first round, I'll just say this last thing that after that first round, obviously Ronnie Lawrence was controlled the whole time, but with the pace Kakramanov was putting on, I was like, there's no way you can keep this up. And he kept it up, and I think that's what really impressed me.
Yes, wrestlers that don't get tired when they're winning the wrestling are a scary proposition. Like
very scary.
I'm not saying he is, but like that's what separates kind of like your Kamaru Usmans, your George St. Pierre's, like your top level fighters, or guys that we are just kind of outside looking in, but that they beat most of the people ahead in the rankings, like your Merab Dvalishvili's that nobody wants to fight. That's scary. Saidukub is like Merab on a budget, but not that you ordered on Wish. He's not the crappy Merab. He's just
he's just like every other fighter on the card. He's just the great value.
No, version. Like kind of like you go to the store, they got like the Target brand paper towels next to the Bounty ones, and the Target ones are just as good. Like get them. Yeah,
same factory, different brand.
Yeah. That's it. That's the beleaguered 11 fight card of UFC Vegas 58. I mean, not wishing ill on anybody. I'm not saying it that way, but just if we had to lose a fight, that it was Cynthia Calvillo versus Nina Nunes, I'm not crying over that. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to what maybe the longest segment here. Let's do the cut list. The way the cut list works when Keith and I do it is we have to agree on the cut. Like Keith is normally a little more aggressive than I am.
Uh-huh.
I'm the nice guy. What a shock. And we have to agree. So some people get a pass. I'm not doing that way this time. If
Mm,
you've got any on your cut list that are not on mine, I'm open to being convinced. I hope you'll feel the same way. Do you know
okay.
how many people you want to cut after this card?
I meant to give this one more pass over, but I got 3. And I'm pretty
Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Whew. Only because I will not cut somebody off a win. I have 3, I guess. Who are
Okay.
yours?
And I was gonna say that actually is like a little caveat to my 3, but yeah, I mean, before I start, like I do feel like this card for some reason was like the matchmakers like threw in a little bone in the middle of the ring that was titled, your job, and told them to fight over it, because there was a lot of like fights where
Actually,
it was just like the loser.
I lied. I got 5.
Okay.
Give me yours.
All right. Well, I'll just go rapid fire. Robertson, Sherman, Casey.
Robertson, Sherman, Casey. Okay, Carl Robertson has lost 4 in a row, now across 2 different weight classes, 185 and 205. He is a man without a home
Hmm.
in terms of weight class, and
And
probably needs to be a man
organizations.
without a home in terms of UFC contract. It's not to be mean. The Contender Series is coming back. It's going to want to send 35, literally, it's going to want to send 35 new fighters to the UFC before the end of the year. Someone's got to go to make room for him.
Yeah.
How badly do you want to see another Carl Roberson fight when the next name your favorite fighter might be out there? That's why it happens. I agree with Roberson. You said Casey, right?
Yes, I did. Who's now 10-10, right?
Yeah, Casey, similarly, she has lost 3 of her last 4, 4 of her last 6. I mean, she's below 500 in the UFC, again, across multiple weight classes. She's in her 30s, so it's, I mean,
Mhm,
I'm not saying fighters don't improve in their 30s. Obviously,
mhm.
they do. Uh, Charles de Bronx Oliveira is the best lightweight in the world, but she is what she is, and she's had plenty of, like, this isn't a busted prospect thing. Like, it might just be time to go.
Yeah.
And Jared Vandera was your other one?
Yes.
Jared Vandera, that is fine. He can go. He has lost 4 in a row, and while everyone's going to lose to Alexander Romanov, most people are going to lose
Uh-huh.
to your dude. He
Arlovsky,
got
Olenek.
girl headlock choked by Alexei Olenek, and he just got punched out by Chase Sherman.
Mhm,
Like he literally got tapped out by a move that doesn't really usually work on men,
mhm.
and then he got knocked out by Chase Sherman. I yeah.
Yeah.
I would also let Sherman go. I don't care that he won.
That's the thing, and I was gonna say both with both with with Sherman and with even and yeah, with Sherman, I like, just based on the performance, I wouldn't mind. And then even to a lesser extent, but probably not even Shevchenko. Obviously she's got that name value, and she's got the champion, who kind of might be the only thing saving her job at this point. But to have a split decision against a person that I'm confident in cutting kind of puts you right at that lowest base.
Well, no, like I'm kind of using my split decision push and pull here, because if Johnson had just like flat out lost to Malarkey, like if Malarkey had just blanked him
Mhm.
or knocked him out or something, he'd probably be on my cut list, even though he's a longtime sentimental favorite.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to cut him off a loss that I thought he won the fight. Similarly, I thought Casey won the fight with Shevchenko. So I'm fine with Casey going, but I think Shevchenko needs to go too. We're still going to see plenty of her.
Yeah, in
Just
the corner.
it'll be exclusively at pay-per-view, so we won't have to hear her yelling. Boz turning my own words against me in the UFC heavyweight division. Anyone is 3 fights from the title. If he wants a title shot that badly, he can go over to PFL and go to women's lightweight.
See,
Uh,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna make a stupid joke that they always talk about gloves, you got pillows on your hands, but in Sherman's case, his hands are the pillows. But no, stupid little joke. We can keep moving.
Right. Bulls and bears. Stock market reference, of course. Bulls are things whose stock is up. Bears are things whose stock is down. We normally name up to 3. and they're in ascending order from the least good to the most good, and from the least bad to the most bad. Do you want to start with the Bulls or the Bears?
Let's start with the Bears. I'm feeling negative today.
All right, feeling negative today. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
You got it.
Okay. Bears. Jared Vandera. The thing is, I sound mean. I shit all over this fight on the preview. I shit all over it in real time. Jared Vandera seems like a fun dude, but he got knocked out by. Well, I would say he got knocked out by the worst heavyweight in the UFC, but if you do that, then he's not the worst heavyweight in the UFC anymore. It sucks. You know, he's not that old. There can be more skills refinement made, but yeah, it's a bad night when you come in and you lose to Chase Sherman in the UFC. Stock down. Ricky Tercios, big time. And again, I say this as a guy who likes him personally. Just stardom is there, but you have to win at least most of your fights, and they have to be fun to watch. This one was terrible to watch. And yeah, all the personality in the world just isn't going to count for much if you lose all the time. It would be different if this were professional wrestling. This isn't too old a reference for you to get, but if this were wrestling, he could be leaping Lanny Poffo, where he's just got the best personality on the planet, but he's a jobber, and his record is 2-80 every year. There's nothing for that in MMA. Bad night for Ricky Tercios. Lots of people had bad nights. This could go a lot of different ways, but I'm going to have to say Rafael dos Anjos. Here's the thing. This kind of puts an effective end to his title aspirations at 155 or 170. This was, even though it wasn't a complete one-sided blowout, it was a changing of the guard moment. Rafael dos Anjos from here on out is a gatekeeper. He is the guy that they're going to put against to see if your Rafael Fizievs are for real. And at least tonight, Fiziev was, and it was all there for the taking. We could be telling a very different story. Dos Anjos had all the momentum out to the fourth round. 18 seconds later, we got what we got. So those are my Bears. What do you got? You don't need to add 3. You can just agree with some of mine, or if you've got 3, go for it.
Yeah, I have some that overlap with yours. I will just say, and this may not apply as much to you, but something that was really great on me the whole time, and I'll just mention real quick, is the 2-man commentary team of Brendan Fitzgerald and Michael Bisping. There was only 2 of them today, and they were kind of driving me crazy. But that's outside of the cage. In terms of what is in the cage,
dude, believe me, judges can be on these lists.
True.
Announcers can be on these lists. Please, by all means.
Yeah. So Michael Bisping and Brendan Fitzgerald is my sort of first bear, but or at least 2-man commentary teams in general. Please don't ever do it again. I do kind of I agree with the Tercios one. I do kind of just lump in Gore, and I put a little note that just says tough 29 fighters, because they both had not great performances tonight. I listed out. I mean, any person who just had a bad night, I put as a bear. Although what's interesting to me is that a lot of these people, while they had bad performances, it's if you take a stock that's already really low and you cut it in half, it's not that much of a drop. And so I would say the stock that was the highest and fell the most would have to be RDA. I know we didn't. I agree with all the points you made about RDA. I know we didn't match make for him at the top of the hour, but I mean, I was just gonna say he is a gatekeeper for the Jalen Turners, the Ismagulovs now, even and the new upcoming lightweights, and so and that was really his last chance to shoot for the title, and he wasn't able to make it happen.
Beautiful. Bulls, you want to go first? You want to go second? What was good?
Yeah, I'll go first this time. Similar. Yeah. I'll go first this time. Let's see. I wrote down just a bunch of names, but I'm just trying to narrow it down. I'll start with I'm still stuck on Kakramanov. Obviously, it was the first fight of the night, so not many eyes on it. But for what little stock he did have, I think it has gone up a good little bit, just based on such a very impressive performance. And I'll say that. Man, I'm trying to think because I'm trying to come up with a third, because people like Malarkey and Nurmagomedov, I do think I could both list as Bulls. Both just promising prospects that, especially for Nurmagomedov, sort of have this aura about them because of their high finish, their sort of fantastic finishes, both, getting into like a really, gritty war tonight, and which I think kind of improves their stock, kind of shows like shows them more to puts more time in their fighting. But I'll put at the top Fiziev, to beat RDA so convincingly over 15 minutes, and then suffer a little bit in the fourth round, but then to get an emphatic finish over a very hard to finish guy, I think puts his stock pretty high.
Excellent. My bulls for the evening. I was going to say Kakramanov. I could say Nzechukwu. I'll just say wrestling, at least until the main event. And even in the main event, it almost turned the tide. The better wrestler had a pretty good night. Kakramanov, Nzechukwu, Brundage, even Shevchenko, some of her best work. Bahalyo. It was a good night for the wrestlers. So I'll say that. From there, Saeed Nurmagomedov, I made some quibbles with his specific strategy, just him playing around a little too much with a dangerous opponent. But at least in terms of talent, physical gifts, just general upside as a prospect on the border of contention, passed the test with flying colors against a very tough test in Douglas Silva de Andrade. And number one, if I am sitting here at almost 1 a.m. Central Time and Chase Sherman still has a job with the UFC, his stock is up, all the way up. I am assuming that off of this resounding third round knockout, the Vanilla Gorilla, okay, I finally said his nickname once on this damn podcast. I'm assuming the UFC is going to sign him to another 8-fight deal because of whatever nudes he's got or whatever trade secrets he knows. So his is clearly the biggest stock up moment of the evening. Last thing, give me a letter grade for this card.
Okay, yes, at 2:00 my time, after 11 fights, which was not as bad as last time I was here. It was 14 fights on that Muhammad versus Luque card, which was brutal to get through. But I would give this a B-.
You
which might be
and
generous.
I are going to have a serious disparity here. I'm giving this card an F. This is possibly the worst UFC card I've watched this year. There's not a single fight I'm going to ever rewatch on this card other than for tape study. The next time some of these people fight. And it's just sad that there's going to be a next time so many of these people fight. And a couple of the better fights were not robberies, but just kind of soured a little bit by not agreeing with the decision, which obviously is a personal thing for me. If you thought Malarkey beat Johnson, then that's your obvious easy fight of the night. For me, it's always just going to be a little bit soured. But yeah, I thought this card sucked, but that's okay, because the best day watching MMA is, or the worst day watching MMA is better than the best day doing most jobs. So
fair enough.
Hey, fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think my criteria may be just a little different than yours. I mean, I just kind of rate it based on what I do on a Saturday night, and at least getting to watch grown men hit each other is at least.
What else would I be doing on a Saturday night? I'm starting to understand why I never met your girlfriend when I was out there in Atlanta a couple months ago.
She was actually in the chat.
Is she as imaginary as the dueling clubs of Chase Sherman?
No, she just goes to a different country.
She goes to a different country. That didn't sound like you making up a lie on the spot.
No, she was in the chat today. Rosie Sellers.
That's her.
That was her. Yeah. I didn't want to say anything because when she said me and you responded to her, I was freaking out. It was so funny because she asked what I was doing tonight. I sent her the link to this. She was in the chat. It was very hilarious to me.
Okay. Well, I don't need to ask you who your listener of the night was, do I?
I guess not. I guess not.
Okay. Well, it's normally I consider Boz kind of emeritus, super OG. This was a competitive chat. I like the new StreamYard thing. It's just a lot quicker to be able to respond back and forth. But I am going to pull Boz out of retirement here. I thought he had the best mix of like punchlines and kind of actual interesting takes on stuff, but that is taking nothing away from Dev or Luke or technical wealth. Yeah, like seriously, thank you guys. Bobby Boucher, thank you guys so much for hanging around with us. This has been the Sherdog Radio Network recap for UFC on ESPN 39, 29, whatever it is, UFC Vegas 58. Next week is an early card, UFC Long Island. It's UFC on ABC3, Ortega versus Rodriguez, and it is about as good a card as you're going to get on free cable from the UFC these years. All you need to do is stick a title fight at the top, and that's it. Like, really? This is a pay-per-view card without its title fight at the top. Like, kind of like, you know, if you like classical music, if you ever heard of like a Pops orchestra, like the Boston Pops or all that is, that's the Boston Symphony Orchestra without all their first chairs. And then they get to go do more fun stuff like play, you know, movie, like film soundtrack concerts and stuff. Next week is UFC pay-per-view Pops. It is just a completely stacked card. Like even the earliest fights on the card are bangers.
Jack Shore's not even on the main card.
Dude. So, and I forget who pointed it out. Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore is on the undercard. You notice there are no heavyweights on this card. I mentioned like the best cards don't have the obligatory heavyweight slobber knocker. No, and instead they're like, oh, you guys want to knock out? We'll put Punahele Soriano and Dalcha Lungiambula to open up the main card. That should give us something. Like it's going to be a 5-way race for fight of the night. Can't wait for that one.
Can't wait.
In the meantime, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Adam, for joining us on the recap here.
Of course.
And we will talk to you guys next week.
Yep. Thank you guys. See ya.